We got into RVing.
Right.
You think maybe they should get into RVing?
Maybe.
Hmm.
A couple of springs ago, we were watching the Ken Burns History of the National Parks on Amazon Prime, which started a discussion about traveling and how much we enjoyed traveling, and thought, well, that RV and stuff looks pretty fun. We'd like to go camping, but we didn't have an RV. So we started talking about it. Maybe we should get an RV or rent one. So this is part of our discussion.
The philosophy of our channel has always been that you can get into RVing and not necessarily have to sell all of your worldly possessions or buy a huge motorhome and travel the world all the time. There are ways to get into RVing that, I won't say normal people, the average person can do. There are wonders to be found close to home. And our thought process kind of worked its way down to a series of items that kind of fell into one or more of three categories. And all three of those categories were things that we felt like we had to consider. And we just kind of wanted to share our thought process at the time with you. So if you were thinking about getting into this grand occupation or recreation, then you'd have something to go by too.
The first question we asked ourselves is, what kind of traveling do we want to do? What can we feasibly do and still work a full-time job? So we started looking at, we weren't really the hunting and fishing type, but some other people are, so that may be what you want. You may want something for a relaxing weekend. You may want to just travel to the state parks in your area or nearby states. Or you may want to go cross-country to, the national parks that are not so close to us, but maybe to some of you that are in areas where they're more abundant. That may be something that you want to do. And that's something you need to consider, to help you decide what type of RV you might want.
And stemming off of that, you have to consider how often will you be able to go RVing. Will you be a weekend warrior, kind of like we are? If you're still working, if you're a wage slave, you probably will only have the weekends and the holidays. That'll be your opportunities to go. That's something to consider.
And it's fall break. It's tomorrow's Halloween, and I don't have to teach.
Are you in a position in life? Are you vocationally able to long time? Are you going to be able to
work on the road?
Are you retired but still have a base of operations? Are you going to be able? Do you want to, or you be able to go somewhere several weeks, several months, and then come back home, so to speak, and recharge? Do you want to? Are you able to sell all your worldly possessions and hit the road and live the nomadic lifestyle? And all these things are factor into what are you able to do, and that stems into how often are you going to be able to do it.
In addition to that line of thinking, you also need to consider, are you by yourself, or do you have a spouse, children, even grandchildren to consider? Mm-hmm. Pets are another thing. And going back to children, being that I am an educator, I think about, homeschooling. If you're going to full-time or long-term, how are you going to take care of making sure that your children are receiving their education? Are you going to have issues with any kind of disabilities? Those are things to consider when you have to get out and take care of setting up and breaking down camp, that you'll physically be able to do it.
And of course, all those points kind of lead to the next category. What can I afford to do? Which is the basis of most everything we do in life, isn't it, folks? When you're looking at what you want out of an RV, what floor plan attracts you? Do you have to have an outside kitchen? Do you have to have slides versus no slides? Do you want to be more nimble, get into tighter spaces with a no-slide unit? Do you have to have a dry bath? Are you open to the possibility of a wet bath? Do you think about a lot of boondocking that you'll have to invest in a large solar array? These are things you'll have to think about, and once you decide that's what you want, then can you afford it? Just like us, when we were shopping for our first one,
Right.
we've mentioned to you folks before, we actually had our eye on the Rockwood Mini Lite 2104, which is the model up from what we ended up getting. That model had one slide, and we liked the extra room it gave, but we were kind of hampered by towing capacity, and so we had to do what we could afford, and
That's right.
then we got the aluminum Falcon 1.0, which we were glad we did. It worked out fine.
And there were other things that led us to choose the one we started with the Murphy bed. Some people don't like a Murphy bed. They want a fixed bed, or they may need bunks for children.
That's true. Yeah.
So there are things to consider that you may be able to live without, or, that's a must-have. That, 70% we heard someone say.
Yeah, we heard that. If you ever find a floor plan that's 70% of what you want, jump on it, because that's about as good as you're ever going to get.
So true. And going back to what we were saying about the unit that we chose was also the towability. We had an SUV. We did not have a truck that we have now, that we were able to tow something larger. So we had to stick within our towability limits, which is not just the tow rating that's on the camper itself. There are a lot of other things to consider. A lot more math to think about, because you're going to put gear in your RV, so that adds weight. But we had to decide, once we decided to upgrade to a larger truck, did we want gas? Did we want a diesel or a larger SUV? What kind of things are you going to invest in? Are you going to buy a new vehicle to go with a new RV as well? Or are you going to try to find something that you can pull with your current tow vehicle? And also, if you're buying a motor coach, are you going to have a towed? Are you going to haul a vehicle behind your motor coach so you don't have to constantly drive that as well? So there are things to consider that you might not think about to start with, that we discussed and planned out.
And it's not just the cost of the RV itself you'll have to consider. Whenever you purchase your first RV, a good rule of thumb is factor in another 25% of whatever you think you're going to spend again on supplies.
Right.
You're going to have the first RV you purchase, you will have to buy things like water hoses and sewer hoses and leveling blocks and wheel chocks, and the list goes on and on and on.
True.
And on.
It's like, so starting a new home and everything in it. So
we were shopping for supplies, I'd say a good 6 weeks before we even went and purchased our RV. So we luckily got some good advice and started getting a jump on things. So that's something that's considered too. That's part of the initial financial outlay you'll have to factor into your thinking. And we don't mean for all this talk of affordability to be doom and gloom, but it's like any other decision in life. We have to do what we can afford. You may dream of a 35-foot fifth wheel or a big toy hauler rig, and then do the math, and you find that you can only afford a 14-foot teardrop.
That's right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the average person, and I don't mean to keep harping on that, but let's face it, the overwhelming majority of RVers are weekend warriors. They're working people. If you find that that you have to scale back your expectations some, that's okay. We can promise you from our own experience that once you get into this experience, you will find it rewarding beyond what you spend.
That's very true.
So you don't let all this money talk, depress you or scare you off.
Away,
it is part of the thought process. You have to go through it, but don't let it scare you off when you get that far into the thought process. You'll surprise yourself when you get to the end of it and realize how much you're getting out of it. But speaking of being willing and able to scale back on things, leads us to item number 3, and that is, are you going to be willing and able to do the maintenance involved?
True. Never ending.
It is never ending. Another pearl of wisdom we've heard over the last couple of years is there are kind of 3 phases to RVing. There's setup and tear down, there's actual camping, and there's maintenance.
Right.
And if you want to find enjoyment in the RV experience, you better find some way to enjoy all 3 phases, because you're going to have to do all 3 phases. Now again, not to scare you off, but RV maintenance is expensive. Yeah. That being said, if you're a DIY kind of person, a do-it-yourselfer, you're a step ahead of the game. You can save yourself a lot of money and take a lot of pride and ownership.
That's right.
The more of this maintenance you can do yourself. Sadly, I am an incompetent boob. There is very little with a wrench that I'm able to do. I do what I can. But for example, the day's going to come, this thing is going to need to have the brakes repacked. I can't do that. I'm going to have to take this thing to some kind of dealer or service shop, and it's going to cost me a few $100s to have that done. That's something we have to factor into our ongoing annual budgeting of using this wonderful piece of machinery. And that's the kind of thing you'll have to factor into your thinking too.
And as we have mentioned several times in our videos, learning to drive a completely different vehicle. If you're not someone that has towed a large camper, it can be, you know, very trying on a marriage. But they don't make those signs that say, you know, I'm sorry for what I said when we were backing up the camper for no reason.
There's a reason those signs sell so well. And the entire maintenance thing is a commitment. You have to accept the fact going in that this is something you're going to have to do. And if you're able to accept that and embrace it, then that eases part of the process.
Sure. Of course, this is just a broad overview of the discussion points that we had about trying to decide if we wanted to get an RV, and once we did, what we needed to maintain that lifestyle, what worked for us, and what we needed to consider before we made a purchase. So we thought it might be interesting for you out there.
We want all of you out there in Noob Nation, as we call it, to get into this experience and see the joy that can be had in it, and do it in a responsible way. And I guess to wrap things up, what we would suggest is do your research. The thought process is just the first step. Once you decide that you're really serious about it, do some serious research. Don't go to an RV dealership right off the bat. That's fun. Hey, we still enjoy looking at new models and whatnot. But an RV dealer he's there to sell you an RV. His motivation is not necessarily in your best interest.
That's true.
And that's fine. I mean, he's there to make a living too. But if you go armed with some knowledge and go with the certainty that this is what I can do, this is what I want, this will work best for me, you'll speed the process along and save a lot of hassle later on.
That's right.
There's lots of YouTube channels out there like us, some even better, let's admit it. Some not as good as ours, but there's RV Trader, there's Our Village, the social media site for the RV community. There's lots of resources out there, so please take advantage of it.
That's true. So if you have some additional comments or advice for others, please add them below. We definitely don't know everything. We're still learning, as we have said many, many times. But, you know, if you like what we've shared with you today, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You may know some folks that are considering getting into RVs, and these might be helpful things for them to, you know, consider as well.
But I'll tell you one thing with certainty, that if you do decide to get into this grand experience, one thing you'll do a lot of, just living and learning.